I appreciate him working with us through the technology issues that we're having today. Joining us now, he, of course, covers Major League Baseball for ESPN, a friend of ours. He's Mr. Buster Olney, and he's back with us on GCR. Buster, it's Glenn. Always appreciate you taking the time for us. Thanks so much for doing this morning.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you say there are tech issues
Yeah.
in our business, it's redundant, right? We all work through it all the time, so no problem at all.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. Buster, it's weird because you and I have had this conversation before. I know you've never had ill will towards the Orioles. You wanted to see the Orioles take advantage of the opportunity that was in front of them, and the ownership group that was in charge simply wasn't doing that. With that in mind, I've got to think that you believe that this is a very good week for the Baltimore Orioles and for their fan base.
What an incredible opportunity for the franchise. And great days you would assume are ahead for the fans who, if you know better than I do, because you're there, there's been just so much frustration for the incoming owners. What an incredible opportunity to be heroes riding in, right? You take over a team that has the best group of young players in baseball. They have no payroll obligations. They have a fan base that's getting juiced, with a passionate group of fans who are going to support this team as they go forward. And more specifically, in this moment, there are still incredible opportunities for the team to make additions before 2024 and augment the club. I have seen a lot of examples in baseball history where even before a sale is formally approved by other owners, the incoming owner will give a wink, wink, nod, nod to the outgoing owners and say, look, we want to make a splash, so we're going to give you the go-ahead to go ahead and make some deals. And right now, we know the Orioles. I mean, they have this, terrific lineup. They need pitching. You can go sign Blake Snell. You can go sign Jordan Montgomery. Even though it's late in the wintertime, those guys are available. You can call the White Sox and make a trade for Dylan Cease. And I haven't asked Mike Elias this, but I suspect because he hasn't been sure about, where the ownership is in terms of spending money, you can understand why he'd be more reserved in trading prospects, behind Jackson Holliday, some of the, second tier guys that they have. Well, now that ownership's coming in, is presumably going to spend more than John Angelos was approving.
Right.
They should be in a position where they could go and make moves today and be able to go and augment this team, for 2024. I think Dylan Cease makes the most sense.
Wow. All right, well, so let me come back to that in a second because I know a lot has been made about the cost of Dylan Cease. But before we get what you bring up, it's funny you say like more than John Angelos because we understand it has to be because that bar was basically nothing, right? Like that bar was Craig Kimbrell. So I think that part of the excitement is that anything is better than nothing. But do you have a sense in the first, 36 hours of this at all for what the line is between the nothing that the Orioles were spending and where this David Rubenstein group would be willing to go? Because I do still, think like this is private equity. This is someone who wants to make profits. The Orioles are still a smaller market team. Like I'm not expecting them to suddenly become the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Mets tomorrow. Do we have a line for where we think they're willing to go, and how much did David Rubenstein's statement yesterday maybe reinforce the belief that it's definitely going to be spending something?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I can't tell you what their payroll is going to be next year. Is it going to be 120 million? Is it going to be 140 million, 180 million? But I think your point about the low bar is dead on. Look, if they do anything, I wrote in a column yesterday that if they were to sign just one of the three, primo young players to a long-term deal, the way the Braves have, Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holliday, just one of the three, that would distinguish them from John Angelos' stewardship of the team. If they happen to sign all three, they'd hold a parade.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
If they go out and add, let's say they take the payroll to 160 million, good Lord. Where would that take this team if you were to spend the money, to augment it for this year, for 2025? It would create so much opportunity for the front office. I don't know where it's going to be, but even a little bit more is going to be better than where they've been.
Just to back that up, it seems that you have no fear. Buster, there's always this part of me that when we deal with super wealthy people, that these people might have egos and might say, yeah, you got things that are working, that's cool, I want to do things my way. It sounds like your belief is more, there's no way this group is coming in and looking at the Orioles and looking at Mike Elias and looking at the progress they've made in drafting, developing, international, everything like that, and saying, we'd rather have our own people doing things. We don't care about what's working for you.
No, I don't think so. But your point is well taken. Because we've seen a lot of examples in the past where ownership groups have come in and sort of bulldozed, front offices. I don't know, David. I don't know exactly how he's going to run the team, but we go back to the whole point that given how it's been run, and I'm not talking about the front office, I'm talking about the decisions that John made to tank for, 3-4 years to maximize profits for ownership. That whatever this ownership group does, it can't be worse. Like, it just can't be worse in terms of where the payroll is.
Buster Olney is with us here on GCR as we're discussing the upcoming Orioles ownership change. Buster, you brought up Dylan Cease. The issue, as I was to understand, we keep hearing the sun and the moon, right? We keep hearing that the asking price is so insanely high that no one is willing to go there. Are you suggesting that perhaps that changes, to your point, because David Rubenstein has the ability to say, yeah, we might have to pay a lot, but we need to pay a lot. We need pitching. And if for some reason it doesn't work, or if we are willing to spend to make up for whatever it is that we're losing.
100%. That's exactly right. You would assume that, when he's talking about wanting to get a championship trophy back in Baltimore, I mean, that's what it's going to take at this point. Yeah. Anybody in baseball can see it. They need a starting pitcher. They need more depth on that side. That played out in the postseason. Dylan Cease, I mentioned, I mean, if you wanted to completely protect the farm system, you could go sign Jordan Montgomery.
Right.
You could sign Blake Snell because you wouldn't have to give up prospects. And I personally, I don't know why the Red Sox haven't signed him. I don't know why the Yankees haven't signed Jordan Montgomery. And to me, he would make a lot of sense for the Orioles because you could, if you have some payroll flexibility, you could add the left-handed starting pitcher that you need in a Jordan Montgomery, and you could protect the farm system. If we don't want to give him, and I don't know what the numbers that Scott Boras is asking for now, maybe, $160 million. If you don't want to make that commitment, then what, you could do if you're the Orioles, because they're so loaded in the farm system, is that you could tell the White Sox, look, we're obviously not talking about Jackson Holliday.
Right.
We're not talking about this guy. We're not talking about this guy. You basically have your no-touch list, and then you say we're willing to talk about the other guys. This is, Billy Beane for years told me that's how he makes deals. Okay. If I'm going to trade you my, great young starting pitcher, then I'm going to need maybe your number 4 prospect, your number 6 prospect, your number 8. Ownership now can go to Mike Elias and say, look, go ahead and make those moves because we will fill in the gap. We'll give you more money to do those other things. I think if they do have payroll flexibility in this moment, I think Jordan Montgomery is the way to go.
It makes a lot of sense to me, Buster. The other thing I would say too is that they still have a problem here, and it's a good problem to have. I understand, but they still have the problem of this glut of prospects in the infield. Like, they can't all have roles with the you have to do something. You can't just keep hoarding these guys forever and having Major League Baseball players playing at AAA. It makes no sense.
Glenn, I mean, the team that has demonstrated that to us, has really made that point for you, are the St. Louis Cardinals in recent years.
Yeah.
How many position player prospects have we heard about with the Cardinals? Dylan Carlson, number 1 pick, on down the line, and they have been incredibly indecisive. Rather than say, look, this prospect has this value right now. We're going to make a hard decision. We don't see him being in our mix. So we're going to take advantage of his value right now. We saw the Atlanta Braves do that early in this offseason with Vaughn Grissom, where they looked at their team. You got Ozzie Albies signed long-term, the other infielders there, and everyone had seen enough of Vaughn Grissom where they felt like he's not going to be the everyday shortstop. So while he's low on service time, while he's inexpensive, then they say, we're going to take advantage of his trade value right now because we don't project him to be in our lineup, and we're going to flip him for Chris Sale. That is, to your point, that is the sort of decision that the Orioles are going to need to make
100%.
rather than just sort of hang in, because the value of all those guys is they add service time or as they linger in the minor leagues, it depreciates what they can get in the market for them.
All right, talk me through Buster Olney with us on GCR. Talk me through, because I'm worried that in hindsight we might look back and say the timing was 2 years late for when David Rubenstein arrived in relation to the three players that you referenced and doing extensions. Adley Rutschman's now only a year away from arbitration and signed for real money when he signed originally. Jackson Holliday and, of course, Gunnar Henderson are both rep by Scott Boras.
Right.
What is the reality? Like, can it be done with any of this group? I'm nervous about this now that we are a little bit into the process with Rutschman and knowing what you're working with Scott Boras and the other two. Can this group bridge that gap and get it done to get these guys locked in?
It's a great point, and you're right to say they're essentially swimming upstream. It seems crazy that if a player is in his first and second year, it might be too late to sign those guys to major extensions. Boris's history is he likes to have his guys go year to year, as he did with Juan Soto, through their early years of service time, arbitration until they reach free agency, because that's how you can get the most amount of dollars. Yeah. Generally speaking, my sense is that's been Scott's advice. But there have been players who have said, you know what, I can't turn down this amount of money. Ronald Acuna Jr. was early in his career with the Atlanta Braves. They offered him $100 million, and they coaxed him out of, giving up that service time and giving up his free agency and deferring that. There's at some point, maybe there could be a price point. I don't know. That comes down to what Gunnar Henderson wants. It comes down to what Jackson Holliday wants. So it just is going to go player by player. You could, if you're the Orioles, go to Adley Rutschman and basically say, what's it going to take? And those are three players. If you're going to make a heavy bet like that,
sure,
like those are three guys that you'd want to bet on. I'll give you an example. One of the young players that the Braves signed to a long-term deal, Ozzie Albies, he's a shorter second baseman who had a major elbow injury when he was in the minor leagues. That might have been a little bit more dicey. But when you're talking about these three guys, generational talents, then maybe you do go and say, okay, we're going to make sure that happens, in part because imagine, the perception points that you're going to get if you pay, you pay an Adley Rutschman $20 more million than you're comfortable with. In the end,
yep.
In terms of this, what the signal is to the fan base, it may well be worth it.
You and I have talked about this before, Buster. There is nothing they could do. As significant to your point as trading for Dylan Cease or adding Jordan Montgomery or any free agent they could sign, there is nothing that could do more for this fan base. And the fears that this fan base has had and the trauma that they went through the Manny Machado era, to turn around and say, we're not doing it again, plant your flag, this guy's going to be an Oriole. And we're not saying they're going to be Cal Ripken, because it's a different era of baseball, and who knows how many guys we're ever going to see in our lifetimes that play with one franchise for the entirety. But there is nothing that this franchise could do for a fan base greater than saying, this is a star player, we believe in them, and to your point, if it's $20 million more than that player's real value, it's probably worth it in what it will do for this fan base.
Especially given the culture of the organization, the history of the organization. I don't think there's another team in baseball that has the connection between the community and the players the way the Orioles have had. The expectation of Brooks Robinson, who feels like, he felt like family.
Yep.
Boog Powell feels like family. Jim Palmer, so many who reside in the Baltimore area. You could begin to build Cal, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. You could begin to build that again and feed into that if you get an Adley Rutschman sign. And who knows, if you sign Adley Rutschman, then maybe Gunnar Henderson begins to look at it and said, you know what? Maybe we're all building something here with my great friend Adley. And then maybe Jackson Holliday is saying, I want to be part of this. This is a great organization. This is a great baseball community, and we can go forward. I think there's tremendous power in that. in beginning to turn around that perception. As we talked about, mentioned several times, they're working from a blank slate here.
Yep.
Like they have so much flexibility, and the bar is so low by how the team has been run over the last 15 years that they can really grow.
Yeah, and a gift of a lot of public money coming in, right, to a stadium that's already beloved that now you get to upgrade. To your point, it does feel like a perfect situation. Oh, and David Rubenstein's a Baltimore native who grew up rooting for the Orioles, which I keep warning everybody does not mean that he's just someone who wants to throw money away at the Baltimore Orioles. Like
As Peter demonstrated.
Yep, 100%.
And Peter's a Baltimore guy through and through. And I always thought there was I got to know Peter really well. I've gotten to know him through the years, and I always thought there was a misperception about him. He wanted the team to succeed, and maybe David can learn from the mistakes that Peter had and trust more people than Peter did in running the franchise.
That part of it's significant, and obviously we're all in agreement that the guy that's running the baseball team is the right guy that has a vision, and it's not just that he hit on number 1 draft picks because Gunnar Henderson wasn't that. He has proven, Felix Bautista was not a number 1 draft pick, right? Like they have proven they have something in terms of drafting and development that we can believe in. Is it fair to say there's a special sauce that we can buy into in what Mike Elias is doing running this baseball team?
100%. And look, they followed the same path as in Houston.
Yep.
They picked the right players. They made the right decisions. They got the guys, at the right time. They signed Jose Altuve to a long-term deal when he was a young player. And you can't look. I've been really critical of John Angelos for the decision to tank those years, but you cannot criticize anything Mike has done in terms of picking the right players and developing the right players and building the right culture.
Buster Olney, you're not doing anything to calm down the excitement here in Baltimore. It is
I'm fired up. Like I just have so many friends who are Orioles fans and just fired up for them. And I'm sure that yesterday or a couple days ago when that news broke, that in the front offices of the Red Sox and other teams, it must have been kind of a daunting moment. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's different. It's a different task now. Like they're going to be serious. They're going to be players, and that's what's so encouraging about all of this. Buster, let me get all we're going to link up your column about this being the perfect time. We're going to link that up on our Twitter account at Glenn Clark Radio. The podcast, everything else. What else can I plug for you, sir?
The Baseball Tonight podcast. We're starting up 3 days a week in a couple weeks. We just put one out yesterday. And then all the stuff that we do at ESPN. I'm headed down to Florida on the 14th, and we'll be in camps all spring.
Awesome. Buster Olney, always appreciate you. You've been great to us over the years. At Buster_ESPN. Thank you for hopping on, and let's chat again real soon, all right?
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks, Buster. Buster Olney.